Kansas took care of business on Tuesday night behind star performances from Hunter Dickinson, Kevin McCullar, and DaJuan Harris. But my big question is Kentucky further along than any of us thought?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoops show out there. We're coming at you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm your host, Isaac Shea. Joining me today, as he does every week, is our guy, Leaf Tulane, and we are fresh off of watching some great Champions Classic matchups, some great Gavitt games, and some other great college basketball as well. We're going to talk about all of that today. We want to thank you for making Locked On College Basketball, especially you everydayers, your first listen or watch every single day to get the best college basketball content out there. If you're new to the show, you're visiting, welcome. We're so glad you're here. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. By the way, if you are a college basketball junkie like Leaf and I are, like our guy Andy Patton, and you want to be talking about it more, you want to be a bigger part of the Locked On College Basketball family, come join our Discord where we're having conversation all day long. Leaf and Andy and I are all active in there. The link is in the show notes. Come join us. All right, before we get into talking Champions Classic, before we get into talking Gavitt game stuff, just a couple quick updates for you from around the country. You might know that I'm doing an undefeated watch where I'm counting down every team as they come off the board of undefeateds. As of this moment on Wednesday morning, we have 109 undefeated teams left. Leaf, we might drop into double digits tonight. We'll have to wait and see. A couple upsets of note from Tuesday night. USC lost to UC Irvine. For those who stayed up late like I did, you got to see it in real time. But of note, no Boogie Ellis for USC, no Kobe Johnson. Doesn't excuse it, but it does make it a little more understandable. Also, Georgia Tech loses at home to UMass Lowell. Woof. Texas A&M goes on the road for a second straight true road game, beat Ohio State and Columbus last week, and then we're at SMU on Tuesday night. They win there. I think that is great showing from those guys early on. So, Leaf, let's get into the Champions Classic now. That's enough rambling around the country. We're actually going to start with the nightcap because it was the more intriguing and engaging actual basketball game. Kansas and Kentucky. Jayhawks win 89-84. And Leaf, where we want it, there's a couple different places we can go with this, but let's start here. Because Kansas won what was a tougher than expected game. And honestly, I think it's because Kentucky might be further along than any of us thought, particularly given that Kentucky had all three of their 7-footers on the shelf last night. What did you see from Kentucky that maybe we didn't expect?
Well, my takeaway is that DJ Wagner and Justin Edwards, who are the presumptive best two players on this team, went 1 of 18. 1 of 18 in the game, and they could have, maybe should have won. And I mean, that to me means Kentucky's better than we realize, because if your best two players go 1 of 18, I don't care how good you are. Like, you could have had the Kentucky 2015 team that had Karl Anthony Towns, Devin Booker, all these guys, and you could have had some of those players go 1 of 18. They still probably win because they platoon. They had incredible depth. But like, there's a real way they lose. So now this team that's nowhere near that team is playing the number one team in the country, 1 of 18, and we're up until the last 3 minutes of the game. Like, they were up 5. DaJuan Harris hit a 3 and then got like a lucky whistle, knotted it up at 84, and then they finished up with a 5-0 run.
Yeah.
And credit to Kansas for finishing it. But
That's right.
My takeaway solely revolves around Kentucky having more solid depth than you realize, considering you're missing 3 centers and your best 2 players, presumptively, and maybe Rob Dillingham should have something to say about that.
Sure.
Went 1 of 18. Not to mention Antonio Reeves did not shoot well either.
He was 3 of 17 from 3, Leaf.
That's too many shots from 3.
That's ridiculous. Like, what are we doing? Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right on there. Like with Justin Edwards, and I mean, we need to talk at some point, not today, about the early NBA draft ramifications? Are there things we're seeing that change any of those presumptive thoughts we had about these guys? But yeah, I mean, this was about Rob Dillingham. This was about Reed Sheppard doing more than I thought he would do. Right? Like he played some in the off-season games that Kentucky had, but I was like, all right, when we get to the season, it won't be as much Reed Sheppard. Man, he did some stuff. As always, feels like it happens every year in the Champions Classic Leaf, where there's some unheralded freshman for one or two of these four teams, or not unheralded, I shouldn't say, but not as heralded maybe as teammates, that just pops off a little bit. And that was Rob Dillingham and Reed Sheppard on Tuesday night, because you talk about Edwards and Wagner going 1 of 18. Dillingham and Sheppard combined to go 10 of 17 and 7 of 9 from 3. Leaf. That's insane. And that's the other thing about Kentucky for me that I want to get to next is, are we finally seeing Coach Cal turn a leaf on how he unleashes his guys to play a more modern style of basketball? What do you think about that?
Well, I think you're seeing more freedom in like, okay, my point guard can score. You've seen it a few times with like De'Aaron Fox, who was just so fast. Where this one is more, hey, it's pick and roll, it's continuity basketball. You're seeing more trust. But I also think it's because they have more guys that are not quite as established. Like even Wagner, who is very well rated, even Edwards, who is very well rated, didn't come in with the rapport of a guy like Fox or John Wall or some of these
Sure.
on-ball guys. So I
Sure.
think that there's more of like an egalitarian approach, which leads to more side ball screens for more different players. So I think there is some of that, but I also think some of it's the feeling out process early in the season, which allows for it to look more modern with more guys ball handling. And then my question for Kentucky, and before we kind of shift to Kansas, is okay, if Edwards, is going to be a top 10 pick, which, I've actually got some qualms with as someone who studies the draft. Before this, I was voicing concerns to Rafael Barlow about him, and Wagner too. And Dillingham's played better. How do you handle the egos? Now that you're better than you anticipate, how does he handle the egos versus performance? And that I think will be a real question to monitor.
And we did mention too, I want to bring up Adu Thiero's name, man. He had a first half. He was a lot of fun to watch in the first half. If he can be part of something of a revelation for Kentucky, that's great too. Here's the thing. Kentucky, because of their youth, is going to take some lumps this year, right? Like that's just a reality. But hey, here's the thing, Leaf. At least it's going to be fun while we watch it happen. And I don't think I could have said that about Kentucky the last several years. But I think that helps us make the shift then into Kansas, because per KenPom, Kentucky is the 132nd most experienced team in the nation, while Kansas is the 19th most experienced team in the nation. And I thought that was part of what helped Kansas down the stretch. They got off, we expected, I think I said on Monday's show, I expected Kansas to maybe win this game by double digits, and it looked like they would. The 9-0 run to start the game. But credit to Kentucky, who stayed resilient, fought back, and took that lead you talked about. But then I thought in the second half, it was Kansas's experience and resilience that allowed them to not freak out because we're losing to Kentucky, and kind of withstand everything that the Wildcats were throwing at them. You had this ridiculous performance from Hunter Dickinson, 27 and 21. DaJuan Harris had a career-high 23 points, including 5 of 6 from 3, which goodness they needed that, because Hunter Dickinson's half 3 going into halftime was literally the only other 3 Kansas hit. And then Kevin McCullar had a triple-double gifted to him by Hunter Dickinson not stealing the rebound at the end of the game. So we'll call it a triple-double, sure, whatever. But so Leaf, on the Kansas side of things, number 1 team in the nation, sure. But something I know you're concerned about, that you and I've talked about a good bit, is Kansas 3-point shooting. I just mentioned it there. I don't think anything that happened on Tuesday night did anything to allay our fears of how the Jayhawks are going to do from beyond the arc.
They only consolidated them for me. I've been lower on Kansas in every AP poll we've done. I've been lower on Kansas entering the season than just about anyone, because you lost 35 points per game from Jalen Wilson, who is probably the 3rd best college basketball player last year behind Zach Edey, Brandon Miller. Then it was Jalen Wilson. So you lost the 3rd best player. Then you lost a lottery pick in Grady Dick, who shot 43% from 3. And now you're replacing him with unknown commodities. You get Hunter Dickinson. Yes, offensively, that's going to be helpful. Sure. And you saw that with 27 points, 21 rebounds.
Sure.
He's very good. That said, he's a worse defender than what you had last year. So you take a step back defensively, and you lose shooting beyond shooting and 35 points per game on their wings. And now you're seeing DaJuan Harris step up, and because they needed it, not because like he took this enormous leap. I think that is almost desperation for Harris to shoot that well. Now, not to mention regression to the mean will happen. He's
Right.
not going to shoot 100% from three, and against other teams, he may not be as aggressive. He is a good leader. He is someone he'll need to step up. But if they don't shoot well, their ceiling is really limited. So I came away more worried about Kansas and more impressed by Kentucky despite the win and loss going the opposite way.
I think that's a good closing word. One thing that is good for both of these teams is they can clearly get to the free throw line. Both of them got to 30 free throws on the night, a combined 66 taken by the two teams. Well, that's the nightcap of the Champions Classic. Leaf, we're next going to go back in time and turn our attention to the first game where one AP preseason top 5 team was guaranteed to wake up today on November 15th with 2 losses. Wow, unbelievable. We'll talk about that in just a second. Right after I tell you that today's episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home that winning trophy is what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits to LED headlights and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Leaf, let's go back to the first game, where Duke wins 74-65. I called this the which preseason top 5 team will have 2 losses on November 14th game. And the big question, two things I want to look at. First off, who was this game more important for, with both of these teams coming in with a loss? More important for Michigan State's elder statesman group to solidify themselves as the second best team in the Big Ten, or for Coach Scheyer to not start off his second year with 2 losses in the first 3 games?
I would say it was more important for Duke because
I
they
agree.
lost on their home court against Arizona, who's a very good team. And obviously, Michigan State lost on their home court to James Madison. But Michigan State has this ability under Tom Izzo to regroup, come through adversity, and then head towards March, all wheels off the station looking really good. Duke, it's new for Jon Scheyer.
That's right.
And I think that plays a factor. Having lost inside Cameron in a marquee matchup, now you have Champions Classic to redeem yourself. You got to win this game, particularly against a team of Michigan State who has been shooting terribly, and that didn't change. They still haven't shot well. That first half, if Michigan State shot, let's just say 50% from those uncontested looks, which I understand is a high number, but just for sake of normal numbers, they would have been up 15-20 at half. Like it's just simply the case.
Easy.
Yeah, and they had runouts. They missed layups. It was really, really sloppy. And Duke was able to weather the storm better because they have more solved offensive answers. Like it's Tyson Walker for Michigan State, and right now AJ Hoggard is playing poorly. Jaden Akins is out of rhythm, and the big situation is very fluid. I trust Izzo to figure these things out.
Oof.
But Sissoko and Cooper are playing with and Booker's not ready. Cohen Carr didn't have a very good game. There's a lot of moving pieces for Michigan State. The only thing that I would have solace in is that Tyson Walker's proven he can be an elite scoring option on an elite team.
Yep.
And so once the rest of the team catches up, I think Michigan State's got a chance. But for Duke, you needed to win this game and prove, hey, against the teams that have comparable physicality, how are we going to win? Because Arizona, despite that game being close, Arizona was ahead at every turn. Yeah. Like they were the better team throughout the entire game in Cameron. So in a neutral site game, Filipowski doesn't have his best game. You're not shooting particularly great. What are your answers? And they came up with a few answers. It wasn't pretty, but they came up with a few answers.
And, I think another thing that hurt Michigan State was Malik Hall's foul trouble, because he was having a nice game, but just was limited in what he could do, particularly in the second half there. And gosh, yeah, you're so right about Michigan State's guys needing to catch up. Xavier Booker, as you said, is not ready. Cohen Carr had some flashes, but like that one dunk was literally, as you said, the only 2 points he scored. Similar to the first game, we said it feels like typically there's a freshman, maybe sometimes unexpected, who pops off in the Champions Classic, and we had that again in the first game, and it was Caleb Foster. Nothing against Sean Stewart or and any McCain or anything else with the other freshmen, but what a night for Foster, who kind of showed me more than I had expected, especially coming out of that Arizona game where I don't think he had a field goal attempt. Leaf, like I think he was 0 for 0 points against Arizona, if I'm remembering correctly. And then he comes out here just doing work. 4 of 5 from 3, 7 of 8 from the field, 18 points to lead Duke scoring. Really good stuff there. Honestly, Leaf, the thing that perhaps most impressed me about Duke on this night was that they had 17 assists on 22 made field goals. That level of sharing the basketball, which I don't have my calculator pulled up right now, which I'm pulling it up in real time. That's 77% of their field goals they assisted on. You think about some of the Coach K years where it was iso ball. Let's get guys isolated, find the matchups, and do it. This team's ability to share the ball and share it well. I mean, Roach and Proctor combined for 11 of those 17 assists. If your backcourt can do that night in and night out, Leaf, Duke's going to be in great shape.
Yeah, I think that doesn't surprise me as much because they have Proctor orchestrating things. I think they have a true point guard orchestrating. And though he didn't have all of the assists, I think that really helps it. I think what won them the game, and obviously the shooting woes of Michigan State helped a lot. But for the biggest thing that Duke did themselves was win the rebound battle. Because I think they were going to win this game unless Michigan State out-rebounded or caused too many turnovers. And Michigan State did cause turnovers, but they got overzealous and got into foul trouble. If Michigan State didn't get handsy at times, I think that this game could have been very different because they seem to nullify any momentum they would build with a reach-in foul. And then the free throw disparity, I mean, like, it was properly called. I think it was, people thought it was ticky-tack, but there was a lot of stupid fouls. And I think that was driving Coach Izzo nuts. But the rebound battle is something that Michigan State, with all these bigs that they have that we say aren't ready, they should be able to win because they were bigger than Duke. Filipowski's not a true 5. He's playing the 5. Sissoko, Cooper, Paul, Carr, all these guys putting bodies on the interior lost the rebounding battle, and Duke won it. So I think that's where the game really was put
That's well said.
into Duke's favor. And then the reaching in, the unable to convert in transition, missing threes, all kind of buried the nail in the coffin for Michigan State. And now my question for Duke, though, who's going to be your 2 guard going forward? Is it McCain or is it Foster? Foster seemed to have more of like a refined role. McCain's got a little more creativity. And I wonder if it'll be Foster going forward because he's a little more spot up shooting happy, whereas McCain likes to dribble and play off Proctor. I think you let Proctor be creative and you let Foster shoot, but it's early.
It is early. And I mean, it was funny because they almost switch spots. McCain, I think, was like 0 of 5 from the field. After I'm looking back at what he did against Arizona. McCain was 0 of 5 on Tuesday night, 3 of 8 against Arizona. So a better showing there for sure. So it's almost like they switched roles from the Arizona game to the Michigan State game. Leaf, that's such a good point about the rebounding, because that's what we were asking. Andy and I were on Tuesday's show was, can Michigan State exploit Duke not having a true 5? And they just couldn't. And to me, that's because Mady Sissoko is just not doing it. And Xavier Booker's not ready. Cooper had to, take the bulk of the load, but he's not that dude. He had 8 rebounds, but there's nothing else with it. And so Michigan State definitely has some things that they got to figure out and get squared away on to get this sorted and go for it. I mean, there's no way they're going to shoot this poorly from 3 all season. At halftime of this game, so meaning through the first 5 halves of basketball they had played, Michigan State was shooting 4 of 44 from 3. That's 9.1%. You talked about regression to the mean earlier with DaJuan Harris. Hopefully they're going to have some progression to the mean with their 3-point shooting, which we fully expect to happen. Leaf, we got to keep moving because there was other great action that happened on Tuesday night. A couple strong Big East performances to help turn things around in the Gavitt games, including apparently Tyler Kolek's ankle is more than fine, thank you, enough to put on a big-time show in Champaign, Illinois. We'll get to that in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. Their app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. In fact, we've got all the big time MTEs coming up next week. How about the odds for the Maui field? Kansas, who we've just been talking about, is the favorite at plus 175, followed by Tennessee at plus 320, Purdue plus 340, Marquette at plus 500, Gonzaga at plus 950, and it goes on from there. That field is absolutely loaded. 5 of the top 11 teams in the country. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Leaf, it was a little bit of a rough night on Monday for the Big East in the Gavitt games, as well as Villanova losing to Penn. But boy, the Big East fought back in a big way on Tuesday night. Good, solid wins for several teams, but we want to highlight Marquette and Illinois, and then Creighton and Iowa as well. Let's start in Champaign, Illinois. Number 4 Marquette at 23 Illinois. Marquette wins by 7. 71-64. And Leaf, coming into this thing, there's a lot of questioning about Tyler Kolek's ankle, how he'd be able to do. 24 points, 6 boards, 4 assists, and 2 steals. My word, Leaf, I think this dude's okay, the reigning Big East Player of the Year. What did you like about both what Marquette was able to do in a true road environment, and then how Illinois seems to be on an okay footing with what they've got this year?
Yeah, these are 2 teams I was high on coming into the season. I've had Marquette in my top 5 each time, but I actually recently have been thinking about these questions that Marquette lost to Michigan State last year, and it was when Kolek was out. What could they do? Obviously, he was not out, but he showed his value in the most tremendous way. He dominated the game. Iguodaro did not have a particularly good game. He was neutralized for the most part by Coleman Hawkins.
No.
Cam Jones had moments. He hit big shots at big times, but he wasn't particularly efficient. And no one else played well. Like Joplin, who I thought would take a big leap. He was the reigning 6th man of the year in the Big East. Scored 5 points. You saw the rest of their team really struggle to shoot the ball. And so Kolek took it upon himself to score more, along with what he can do distributing the basketball. So to me, that alleviated some worries, but then it also reinforced the ones of, okay, should Kolek get in foul trouble? Should he get hurt? How good can this team be? So that's kind of, I was torn. I was like, man, this guy's really, really good. And I love a good point guard. Point guard play takes you as far as you can go. But if you have a bad game, what is it going to mean? This almost reminds me of that Michigan State team that was led by Cassius Winston. That was led like, it was COVID cut it short, but they had Xavier Tillman. Tillman would be the Iguodaro, and then who was going to be the third option? And you don't know necessarily. And obviously Cam Jones would be that here for Marquette, but there's some disparity between the levels, between 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and then as for Illinois, I felt like this was about the game that they play. Like they could have played better, but this is kind of their baseline, where they're going to have one guy step up and shoot well. Today it was yesterday it was Luke Goody, who I think should start. I've said this for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
I also think that Hawkins played a good game despite a poor shooting performance. He was 2 of 9, but he defended really well and he created for others. Shannon, I've said this to you many times, and I think he's going to be better, but I wish he would play smarter. There are times where he made good passes. There was a step forward, but he over drives or he shoots too quickly. And if he could just put his foot on the brake just a second and turn off that turbo speed, I think Illinois would really benefit and reap the rewards from the attention he draws. So this was a game where they didn't quite have enough offense, but their defense was plenty good.
Yeah, I mean, let's say with Illinois, I agree so much with that because with Terrence Shannon, like a decent shooting night, I would call it a little bit inefficient, 6 of 16, 3 of 8 from three. But my goodness, 2 assists and 5 turnovers. I know he leads the team in scoring on this night, but as you said, he's got to be able to downshift and upshift and move and use his natural athletic ability in a big way to overcome things. I'd like to also, I need to see more from Quincy Guerrier, Leaf. I mean, I know he led the team in rebounding. He had 10, but only took 3 field goal attempts and didn't connect on any of them. 0 free throw attempts. He needs to do more for Illinois to really, really come through. I love your call on Luke Goody. A great solid game from him, 4 of 7 from 3. Who would you take out of the starting lineup to replace him with? They've got Ty Rodgers, Guerrier, Coleman Hawkins, Domask, and Terrence Shannon Jr. Who would you flip him in for?
I'd consider playing him for Guerrier. The other option would be if you're gonna play big enough, like Guerrier has been masquerading as a 3 the last couple of years. He's a 4. He's an absolute 4, and this year
Agreed. Agreed.
he's playing the 4 this year, but he's still shooting threes and he's instead of being a slasher, he's being a spot up guy. So 2 of his 3 attempts were from 3, and they were like corner threes. It's like he's relegated to being this guy, and I think it compromises their spacing. If you were going to play bigger, I'd start Danger, which I don't necessarily recommend. But you might as well, if you're going to play versatile, like that's what you're committing to. If you're playing Hawkins, you might as well play Goody at the 4. And like Ty Rodgers is huge. Shannon's a big guard. Domask is not lacking in size. He played the 4 at Southern Illinois last year.
Right.
And so you might be a little smaller. There could be some teams that cause you issues, but I think it's a plus offensively, and this team's good enough defensively that this could mask some of their issues offensively. And I've said this is my second year, and honestly my third year saying it. Like, do you remember when they played Houston and they were supposed to beat Houston? Houston ended up beating them like handily. But every time they made a run, it was RJ Melendez and Luke Goody were in the game. They were unheralded freshmen. And it was like, oh my God, you've had this shooter all along and you like hit him from playing sight. And now he's knocking down threes against one of the best defenses in the country. So I might just consider giving him more volume of shooting and let your defense suffer just a touch.
Why would you not try it? Why wouldn't you at least try it? I think that's my question there for Illinois. As for going back to Marquette, yeah, you're so right. Iguodaro, Jones, and Kolek all have 13 or more points. No other Golden Eagle scored more than 5. Leaf. They got to get something figured out. The nice thing for Marquette and Shaka Smart is that they don't play again until Monday, November 20th. And so that's Monday of next week against UCLA. I forget which. That's good grief. That's in Maui. So
yeah.
That's their next game. That gives Kolek some time to heal up. They got to get that ankle good to play 3 games in 3 days and be ready for that. So that'll be interesting to watch and see. Let's turn our attention just for a couple minutes because we don't have too much time. But I just want to talk about Creighton and Iowa for a minute. Iowa, I thought put up a strong try here, but too much Creighton late in the game. Where I really want to go with this is Stephen Ashworth has to be more. You had talked about how you were concerned about Creighton because he's not a point guard. And I think one of the things we talked about is, but Coach McDermott's going to put the ball in Trey Alexander's hands more. And that's exactly what Creighton is doing. And I love that move for the Blue Jays. And I think it makes them an even better team. Alexander was an absolute dude, not only Tuesday night, but has been in Creighton's game so far this season. Was an assist shy of a triple-double, 23 points, 11 boards, 9 assists. My goodness, I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing from Creighton right now. But again, need more from Stephen Ashworth than we saw on Tuesday night.
Yeah, and for those of you who didn't listen to the episode, just for clarification purposes, it's Ashworth to me. He's a very well-known commodity because he's in my same graduating class in high school from Utah. So I know his game pretty well, and so I didn't think he was a point guard. In high school, he played the 2 as well, almost. So it almost was because I love Trey Alexander so much that I thought the ball should go through him. So I think this is a blessing in disguise, but I think it was erroneously reported by so many saying, because they get a point guard that will pass the ball more than Ryan Nembhard, it'll be an upgrade. No, Ryan Nembhard's a far better point guard than Steven Ashworth.
That's right.
It's just that the ball is going to a player that maybe should have had the ball anyway, and Trey Alexander. So that's just a clarification, but I agree with everything you said. I love that they're playing through Alexander. He's a mid-range assassin. He drives and kicks, and they've got great shooters to complement his strengths. They got Kalkbrenner on the interior. But I do think there are going to be some games where you want him just as a scorer and not have to have the distribution role.
Alexander,
and that's where Ashworth needs to step up. Whereas when Nembhard was there, they could run pick and roll, and he could have 5 points, and Kalkbrenner could have 25.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And I mean, goodness, for Alexander, he's got to be so glad he decided to take his name out of the draft and come back. You love to see it. One of the questions we had is, it seems like Creighton is going to have one of the best starting fives in the nation, or at least that foursome, plus Mr. Miller. But what's the bench going to be? Man, I'm loving. We got a great performance from Farabello on Tuesday night. Frederick King had 12 as well. Isaac Trout contributed a little bit. I'd like to see more there. But, really in college basketball, you just need 8. And if Trout, King, and Farabello can be those dudes behind the starting 5, Coach McDermott is going to be in great shape. Leaf, we got to get out of here. What a great Tuesday night of basketball. So fun to talk all these games. Y'all, feast week is almost here. Eat some turkey. We're going to settle in and watch all these MTEs. I cannot wait at all. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. Please, if you would, go leave us reviews on Apple Music or anywhere else you listen. It helps the show so much. Again, you can join our Discord. The link to that is in the show notes. Please make sure to subscribe on video and audio. If you're watching, smash the like button. We'd love to hear your comments on all of Tuesday night's action. As always, apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats, and until tomorrow, peace.